Now, once we understand what is macroeconomics and what are the key indicators and key policy objectives of macroeconomics, now we need to start building a way of thinking about the way in which the macroeconomy works. Now, on the face of it, that can be a daunting task, because macroeconomics, as we have defined, is when we look at the whole economy as one single unit and we try to figure out all of these different interlinked economic variables and what is happening to them. So seemingly it can get complicated. But the way we keep everything nice, simple, easy and organized is through the use of simplifying assumptions as usual. And the first main assumption that is very often very easily overlooked by a lot of A-level students, because you're thinking about macroeconomics, the whole economy, so it has to be complicated. So you forget about the first main simplifying assumption, which is that in order to analyze the working of the entire macroeconomy, you just need to think about four main players, or what we say, the four main sectors that together make the entire macroeconomy. So you don't need to think about anything other than, first of all, households, or what we can simply call HH. Now, households, what basically is the meaning of households is all the consumers in the economy. So instead of looking or thinking about consumers of clothes and consumers of cars and consumers of housing and so on and so forth, you just group together all the consumers into one, but under one name, under one category, which you call the households. You can also think about households as the normal average person who either wakes up and goes to a 9-to-5 job in the morning, earns an income, spends some of it and saves the rest. Or you can think about another average normal person who maybe owns his own private business or a small medium-sized business, goes and works and tries to make a living and then comes back, spends some of his income and saves the rest. That is what is the meaning of households. Now, the main function, the main job of these households, or I should say the main role of these households that we consider at the macroeconomic level, is that first of all, they consume. Now, consuming or consumption at the macro level means when these households buy some of the total output that the country is producing. So there is a very, very precise meaning of consumption in macroeconomics. It means the amount of total output of the country that is being bought by these households. That is what consumption means. Now, these households, as I said, they consume part of the income that they earn. The rest they save, which is another important role of these households, because every year macroeconomists look at the sum of the total saving of all the different people, that is the total savings of the households, and that tell them the total aggregate savings that the country as a whole has accumulated throughout the year. Which, as we will learn, is very important, because the more a country saves every year, then the more it will have to invest and grow in the future. So savings is another key role that these households play. Then the second main sector of macroeconomy is simply known as, and let me do it in my slightly bolder font. The second main sector is firms. Now, by firms, again, what we mean is that instead of looking at producer of this product and that product, we just group together all the producers and simply use the term firms to refer to all the producers at one single time. So macro level, aggregate level analysis. Now, the main role of these firms is obviously that they produce goods. They are responsible for producing this total output of the country. But do remember that these firms sometimes also buy and purchase some of the output that they have produced. So think about producers. They need to buy furniture, they need to buy stationery, they need to buy other things to run their businesses. Now, when firms buy some of the output that they are producing, then remember that that is known as investment. Now, again, a very specific way in which you from the very beginning need to think about all of these terms. Whenever we talk about investment, think about it as firms buying some of the output that they have produced. Then the third sector, the third main player of macroeconomics that we consider is government. Now, government has many roles in macroeconomy as well as microeconomy, but the two key roles at macroeconomic level is that, first of all, the government every year collects a certain total amount of tax revenue. So again, remember, we are not talking about here about taxes on one particular product, although that is a source of total tax revenue, but basically we are going to be concerned with direct taxes, which, remember, we learned in the previous course that direct taxes such as income taxes, they have a macro level impact. They impact all the consumers that belong to these households, and therefore the total incomes are affected, the total consumption of the country is affected, and so on and so forth. So on the one hand, the government has this role of taxation that allows it to collect a total sum of revenue every year, and then every year the government also spends a certain amount of revenue that it has earned to buy some of the total output of the country. And this government spending is simply known as or denoted by the symbol G. So this is something that I want you to get used to from the very beginning. In macroeconomics, G means the total sum of money that the government has spent on buying the output of that country. So those are the two main roles of the government, the third sector. And then finally, you have the fourth and the last sector, which we simply call the external sector. So EXT over here for external. And what we mean by external sector is that, you see, when I was explaining to you the balance of payments, I explained that countries deal with other foreign countries, and because of that, sometimes money moves in and sometimes money moves out. Now, obviously, every country will have dealings with more than one foreign country. They will have dealings with multiple different foreign countries. But instead of looking at and analyzing the dealings and money flows between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and then separately between Pakistan and the USA and so on and so forth, in macroeconomics, we group together all the foreign countries into this category called external sector. It means all the countries other than Pakistan or the country that you are considering itself. That makes the external sector. And the two main things that are the macro important things that goes on with the external sector are that you either export goods from external sector, that is from these other foreign countries, or I should say you export goods to them. Export means Pakistan selling goods to other countries. And sometimes you import goods from these other countries. You buy things from this external sector. Now, as we move on, obviously we will elaborate upon all of these different roles and functions of all of these different sectors. But at this stage, this is all I want you to remember and then retain. Don't think about macroeconomics when you are analyzing macroeconomics. Don't think about anything other than these four main sectors, these four main players, and things will stay much more easy for you. They won't get very complicated. Now, let me sort of lay out the structure of this AS Macro course and how we are going to make sense of how these different economic variables such as output and price levels, how are they determined, when do they change, what causes or what affects all of these indicators. Now, to make sense of all of those things and to start building an analysis of the macroeconomy, we first of all will start off in the next video by introducing something known as the circular flow of the macroeconomy. Now, the circular flow of the macroeconomy it's not a model, but it's basically a theoretical way of visualizing and a theoretical way of understanding or imagining how these four different sectors of the macroeconomy interact with each other. Now, circular flow itself, it just takes 5 minutes to introduce and understand what is the circular flow and how we are supposed to think about the interaction of these four sectors through the circular flow. But based on this core conceptual way of thinking about the interaction and working of these sectors of the macroeconomy, we can then build up a lot of different economic models. And some of these models that we are going to cover in A-level economics, first of all, includes what is known as the leakages and withdrawals model. Now I'm calling it a model, leakages withdrawal model, but it's basically a very minor thing. So as I introduce circular flow to you in the next video, in that same video we will also cover what is the meaning of this leakages withdrawal theory. And then in the remainder of this first section, we are going to talk about something known as national income accounting, which is basically the practical way in which countries in reality actually measure this amount of total output, or what we will learn is known as countries' GDP. The actual real way in which countries measure and calculate this GDP, that is known as the national income accounting. So there are 3 different ways in which you can calculate this total output. So that is something we will learn in this first section. Again, I'll try to link the understanding of this national income accounting with this circular flow, the conceptual way of thinking that we will use as the base. And then we will move on to the main part of this course, the model of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. This is the key model that we need to understand, because this model is basically a graph which gives you a snapshot of the entire macroeconomy. It's a simple graph, but it shows you graphically in a theoretical way the level of GDP or total output, as well as the price levels, as well as the total employment, and it tells you about a couple of other important macroeconomic things, all at the same time. The simple graph of AD and AS. And more importantly, it tells you that when these aggregate demand and supply changes, then what will be the impact on all of these key economic indicators. So we can use this model. If we understand what will shift these curves, we can basically understand the impact of any macro level change in the economy. We just need to shift these curves, and that will tell us, okay, what will be the impact on all of these different economic variables. So a key model. This will be the backbone of all the topics that we cover in the remainder of this course. So that is the broad outline. So these first 2, remember, these are minor topics. So this I cover in the next video. This I cover in the remainder of this first section. This ADAS, the backbone of this macro course, we start building it from section 2. So keep watching.